Hello. This is a video um, that's supposed to show you what it can be like to be a 30-year-old Swedish man and what that may mean. And the reason why I'm doing this is, well, to put it simply, the world is getting connected very fast in different ways that wasn't possible before, and I think there's a lot of good reasons to explore these possibilities that arise, and this is my attempt of doing just that. And I will explain a little bit more in the end of this video about why and my reasons for it. But this is a video about being a 30-year-old Swedish man right now and what has led up to this for me. For anyone to take part of, anywhere around the world, I assume or hope there's different restrictions and different paths and situations and so forth. But I'm just gonna put this, out there. So, starting, I was born in the year 1988. That's around the same time when the Berlin Wall fell. And it's not much after or around the same time the Soviet Union is collapsing or disappearing or whatever you want to say about it. So, my childhood, I was raised in the countryside in the middle of the demographical Sweden. That's just about in the middle part of the country, just west of the capital Stockholm. And I hope I can put a picture in this video to explain a little bit further. And I hope to be able to do this throughout the video. I'm not prepared this very much. I thought about it last week and I thought about it going to and from work this week. So I decided I would make a try this weekend. So 1998, I was started to get raised in the countryside 2 miles south of a city called Örebro, and it's in part of Sweden called Närke. And I live on the countryside. We had one neighbor that we could see from our yard and house. We were surrounded by forests. There were some cattle, and of course some cats. And the early years I was the firstborn, so I had a lot of fun just exploring the surroundings and just seeing what's out there around the house and in the forest, in the fields. I had a lot of fun with all the kind of insects you find, butterflies, kind of fruits, pears, apples, gooseberries, plums, rhubarb, and probably a couple of more like strawberries and similar kind of berries. It was a very quiet area, and as I said, the nearest neighbor was quite a walk for a child at least. So I spent my days playing with the cats and whatever kind of insects I might find. 2 years after I was born, I got a younger brother. And 2 years after that, also a younger sister. And I'm just gonna talk about a few of my childhood memories and make what you will out of it. When I was really young, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, I would, as soon as I would wake up, I would go down the stairs, put on my boots, and just go out in the fields with the cattle, with the cows. And that was fun, I guess, but not so much for my mother. I have a strong memory from following one of our cats into the forest, and I got stuck there in some kind of a swamp or sink or whatever. And this is the first kind of real terror I remember, or I was struck by fear. I just remember the cat going away, me stuck there with my foot, screaming for mom. I think I screamed about 5 minutes or so until she found me. Another strong memory is, as I said, I collected a lot of insects, and some of them I kept as pets, and I decorated like small containers with vegetables, greens, whatever I figured the kind of animal would need to survive or thrive in that environment. And something that was special to me was finding a cocoon for a caterpillar, because I knew they were gonna come out someday, and well, I just enjoyed the thought of perhaps witnessing it, or at least in some way experienced it. So I had one. It was some kind of brown cocoon. I'd never found it before. I kept it in a container for, I don't know, a week or two. Kept it with me on holidays. And there was this one cocoon I had. It wouldn't hatch or die or dry up or anything. And in my mind, I was seeing that small bug inside of this cocoon that was just struggling to get out, become a butterfly. And I figured I could help it. So I went inside and got a pair of scissors, and I knew not to hurt the insect inside, so I cut it open gently as I held it in my hand and looked at it. And as I cut it open, I could see inside, and there was some kind of green, a little bit slimy creature in there. Just started crawling around, and I've never seen anything like this, and it really scared me. I threw it away and I ran inside again. And I don't think I never mentioned this to anyone, at least not in my younger years, but it kept with me. I remember fighting with my younger brother. It was kind of peculiar kind of fight. I'm not sure if it was inspired by perhaps the TV show. We watched something with that much family of dinosaurs. The father was some kind of working dinosaur, came home, shouted, "Honey, I'm home." Anyway, when we fight it, we would just scream at each other from a distance, and we were trying to imitate the kind of dinosaur scream. I think we sound like "roar," and we did this. Whoever could make it the loudest and most scary, I think, was considered as the winner in the argument. We weren't very violent, but of course, brothers duke it out sometimes. And another strong memory I have, I think that's the first kind of violent memory I recall. I don't know what started, but my brother and I was getting physical, and I had him on the ground, and I realized that if I jumped now and I tried to land on his head with my knees, I would inflict the most damage on him. I don't really think I managed, and I'm glad for that. What else to say about this period? We watched a lot of TV shows. It was a kind of American TV shows, you know, superheroes, robots. It's called Thundercats, Turtles, Power Rangers. So we got a lot of inspiration from these kind of shows. We love, you know, going through the toy catalogs with all the little transformers and weapons and whatever you might find. Another thing that was really important to me was I remember a lot of it, is me trying to figure out how to handle myself or take care of myself, perhaps. I thought a lot about what I needed if I ever had to stay outside our home by myself. So I spent some time, you know, decorating. We had this kind of slide, I think it's called, you know, there's a stair on one side and you slide down the other, and underneath it you can enter. It was like a little hut or something. And I brought to this hut a lot of items that I thought I needed to survive, like toilet paper. I had water. I tried to make you know, some kind of apple juice. I had water in a bucket with apples and sugar, something I picked up from my grandma's. Let's see. So yeah, well, that will sum up my early years, I think. And after this, I had some kind of schooling experience. But because my mother had first me and then my brother 2 years later and then my sister 2 years after that, I was able to stay home, or I was allowed to stay home with the family up until I was 4 or 5 years old. And at the same time, my brother also started going to some kind of daycare. Anyway, I think it's because I was put late in the daycare that I don't think I fit in. I don't remember much from this period, but I don't have much memories of it. It's a short period. I think they put me in the daycare for about maximum 6 months. Some kind of funny memory from this period is, well, as me and my brother were there together, we naturally played together a lot. Might also be a reason that they separated us. I'm not sure. But one memory, we were playing outside. You know, the daycare have some kind of yard that's fenced around, and all the kids playing there. We have this sandbox, swings, everything, some kind of little asphalt, and go around where you can go on some kind of bicycles and motor replicas. Me and my brother mixed up some water and sand in the 2 buckets, and we hid behind a rock at this little asphalted runway. And as the kids passed by, we would stick our heads from the back of the rock and start slinging mud at them, all the mixed water and sand. And my brother hit this kid real good in the face. He started crying immediately, and the supervisors picked it up immediately, and they started running towards us. And I remember it was also very fearful moment, also kind of shameful, fearful. They caught up us, and I remember I was lifted in the shirt, the back of my shirt. They lifted me, and I actually peed myself from fear in that moment, and started crying, of course. Anyway, as I said, it was a short period, and after that I was moved to preschool, I think it's called. It's in my days he did 1 year perhaps before he started the first year in school. And I went to this place a little bit earlier than most kids, I think. So I started hanging out with at least 1 year old, 1 year older kids and playing with them. And I get to know at least one real good friend in this period. We kept being friends for the first part of school years. I don't want to talk too much about the school. I think the school, at least in Sweden and perhaps countries like Germany that have had somewhat of similar political development over the years, the school was designed in a special fashion. I think all schooling is designed, of course, but since we have not had a real crisis or war in this country for a long period of time, I think the school system was throughoutly worked somehow, and everything in the society. I think it could be well planned, because there were always coming these younger generations, and you have control over the schooling of them, and of course by that you also have control of what they learn, what they think about the world in some degree at least. Well, we did math, we did English, we did Swedish, when I was young we did also handwriting, so we learned to write pretty. That's not something you do nowadays, I assume, since we just mostly use our fingers on screens or keyboards. I had a good time in the early years of school. I have always had a lot of friends, and I've thought about this, and I think in my personality, because of somewhat because of my younger years, I had a lot of free time. I did what I wanted. No one supervised me. I was in this kind of safe place on earth, I think. I had no fears, at least. So I was never afraid of doing what I wanted to do, and I always made sure to do what I wanted to do. And I think I also had this friendly attitude towards other people. I enjoyed talking about things, and getting to learn people, understanding things, figuring it out, trying. So I had a good years. One peculiar memory of mine is perhaps I think it's a second or third grade. Kids were playing Truth or Consequence. I think it's a well-known game in the Western world, at least. So you spin a bottle, and whatever direction the bottle is pointing, that person has to answer the question by the previous person that was targeted by the bottle. And he has to answer the question, would you like to tell the truth, or would you like to have a consequence? So tell the truth, you tell the truth, or consequence, you taken some kind of action that's given to you. And all the other kids were talking about who they were in love with and stuff like this. And this was somewhat strange to me, because I had never thought about it, and I had never, at least I didn't think I had experienced what they were talking about. So the bottle got to me, and well, everyone else has been answering the questions. Who do you love? I had no answer. I really didn't want to lie about it or make it up because I didn't know what it meant. So I said truth at first, and the person said, "So tell us who you're in love with." And I quickly said, "Oh, okay, please, can I change my mind? I would like to have a consequence instead." Thinking how could I outsmart the question, and instead I just got told, "So can you please walk up to the person you're in love with?" And I had to make something up, of course. That was the easiest way out, I guess. Yes. Uh, yeah, forgot to mention. So, just about when I started the first class of the first year of school, my parents separated for the first time, and it was really hard on me. I don't remember what I thought about or why I thought about it, but I remember, thinking a lot about relations and mother and father and what it's supposed to be like, why it's like this, and can I fix it? That's I think I really wished that I could fix it. But anyway, so my mother moved away from that house out in the countryside into the closest village with a school. Well, yeah, they actually got back together for I don't remember how long, but I think it was. I remember this period as somewhat good because I know most parents probably hide their problems as far as they can from their kids. But anyway, they separated again, and this was also, of course, a big sorrow for me. I thought about it at night, before I went to bed, that how could they possibly get back together? How could they start loving each other together? Loving each other again. These kind of thoughts. All right, so let's say they separated 2 times already. My mother has, well, actually, they bought a house together when they got back together, and after that they separated. My father stayed in the house, my mother went into the apartment, and the deal we made, well, that was the deal we had for the first period as well. We stayed, me and my siblings stayed at our mother's place for 2 weeks, and then we spent 1 weekend at our father's place. And this is not a very uncommon situation, at least not here in Sweden. It's more the rule that people, split up. At least that's my impression. I don't have the statistics, of course, but judging from what I've seen and what I know, it's standard practice. It's not a big deal, and it's also not a big deal to have children before marriage, and this traditional, perhaps also religious kind of values. My grandfather was a bastard child, as they say. A child that was produced outside of a wedding, or is it called wedlock? No, wedding. Anyway, the age is 10 to 20. So when we we got a video game. It was called Sega Mega Drive. I think it's a 16-bit kind of game. We got the games The Lion King, and of course Sonic the Hedgehog, different kinds of Sonic games. We had of course played video games before. We played Nintendo, the 8-bit, and also some really old machines at friends' fathers' places. Anyway, we really love this video game. Me and my brother, we played it very much. Even my mother played it, and I think it's about this time. Perhaps this is about 1994, 1995. We also got a computer about this time. It was a Mac 2, it was called. Black and white screen, some kind of games on it. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. I don't remember if this was on this particular computer or not, but we also got some kind of chat program that my mother mainly used when she was single, I guess. But I was interested. I think it was intriguing to me that you could speak to people from all around the world in this machine, and my mother was doing it, and yeah, I was also doing it pretty soon. With the computers, I think we also learned, the English language quite fast with some help from grandmother. So I was able to, I think it was about 11 years old, 10, 11, when I was able to chat with people in English online. Of course, not many people want to chat with a 11-year-old boy from Sweden, because I didn't have much to say. I knew you could write or you could ask ASL. It was like a standard introduction phrase, and that's what's your age, sex, and I think it's the language you speak. Anyway, we got a lot of video games over the years. We have the PlayStation, we have the Nintendo 64, and we loved Zelda, we loved Super Mario, we loved Mario Kart. My mother loved those games as well. When we got our first PC, and we were starting to get a bit into the teenage years, perhaps, maybe 12, 13. We also played this card game called Magic the Gathering, and I think this all links together nicely, because it's practicing the English. It's games with all the mythology, the magic, the different kind of creatures and names and stories. It was a world to dive into, to say the least. And I remember a lot of things from the Pokemon, both the card games and the video games. I remember when I got my first Game Boy and the Pokemon Red version. And as soon as I put the batteries in and put the cartridge in, going in the car back home from buying it, I was immersed by that experience. And I played it, very much, too much perhaps. My friends played it. With the computer we had a lot of fun. We had some older friends of mine, had older siblings that could burn CDs with the games. So we bought them. We bought StarCraft, Warcraft, Heroes of Might and Magic, Diablo. Played a lot of games. And outside, what we would do, we played football. We went around hitting trees with stick, hitting grass, each other. We made not crossbow, but yes, standard bow, shoot arrows with. Made tree houses. Played hide and seek. We made weapons in every kind of way. I think a very standard weapon is you take some kind of plastic pipe, put either a balloon or a cut off finger from a rubber glove, tape it to the cylinder, and you have a perfectly good, pea shooter or whatever you want to call it. You can shoot berries or rocks. I think what's more interesting from this period, I think at perhaps 12 or 11, no, I don't know, first did this and also did the smoking with the cigarettes. My mother was a smoker, so, and my friends' mothers were also smokers, a few of them, so it was not hard to get the tobacco. Yeah, I remember in school there was a big buzz about some kids trying the Swedish snus tobacco. It's just tobacco put in a little bag and you put it on your lip. It's derived from the same kind of snus snuff that you put up your nose there from way back. Other kids' parents in school were concerned about some kids bringing this kind of stuff to school. I was drunk the first time at 13. We had some older friends that lived in an apartment close to the school. I think they were about 20 or something, 21, 22, 23. And they were all often drinking beer, I remember, and they had like these porno magazines in the apartment. And they, acted cool, told cool stories, put you down, made you realize you were only a child. They bought us beer, and we got drunk. But I was not much into drinking and stuff like this for a period after that. I spent my time at the computer. So this is before the fast internet. We had the modems, and that made you not be able to use the phone line. So it was not much use back then. We could download songs from the Napster or Direct Connect, but it would take a while. But we arranged these LAN parties, local area network parties, where we played and shared music, movies, wares as they were called. We were quite organized, I would say. We were a couple of kids in the middle teenage years that would organize these events. We bought computers, we built them. We actually built the tree computer in the. I'm not sure how to say it, but the woodworking section part or classes of the school. We made a really big computer out of wood, and we put in the computer parts, so it was working. We went to, it's called DreamHack. It's a really big LAN party in Sweden. I'm not sure when it was started, but I would think it's in the end of the 90s somewhere. It's still very strong, big and going strong today. And we had pogs. I don't know if it's called pogs internationally. It's just small bricks you put on top of each other, face down, and you have some kind of thrower. It's also like a pog, but bigger, heavier, made of plastic or iron or some material. You throw from at the face down pile of pogs, and whatever pog that was faced up from that throw or the collision, you earn them. So it's kind of like a poker game for kids. We played a lot in the breaks. I did skateboarding. Mm, yeah, and I played a lot of computer games, and I think this is so. This is where we. Well, I'll get back to that later. So after the age of 15, or I think it's the end of the standard school, up to that age, we have classes 1 to 9, and after that you have I think that's the equivalent to high school. It's called the gymnasium. It's 3 years, and these years you, well, depending on your grades from the previous school and your plans for the future, you choose what kind of education you want. Perhaps practical one or more theoretical one if you had plans on studying for something, or if you didn't make the earlier school years, you could correct that mistake also. Well, I made it out of my early school years with a grade that was just barely above okay. So I was not the best student. I choose electricity as my area of education, and the reasons, well, I wanted to go into industrial, perhaps, I don't know, welding, making bits and pieces of metal. But that kind of school moved far away from my town, so it would mean an hour bus or so, I think. And so the choice was electronics. As I said, I wasn't the best student, and I continued to not be the best student. I was pretty close to the mark at that time for keeping your state-provided school money, or how to put it. If you stay in school, you get a small help from the government. Can't find the word, sorry. It's called bidrag in svenska. So I was I was close to 25% away from school, and was the limit then. So I was in meetings and stuff, I had no real vision for the future. I had a lot of fun, but I didn't really enjoy school. It wasn't motivating for me, and I didn't have the same kind of idea of my future as my classmates and friends. I didn't think much about it then. There's always people that has the same mindset that you could hang with. Anyway, I did all right in school, I would say. I didn't spend much time for it, but I passed a lot of grades, but I didn't get the final degree. So I got a collective paper of all the courses and all the work I had done, and so I was not allowed to higher education. That's the main point. So after this was kind of depressing period for me, since I had no real contacts for work, and I had no diploma, no real experience, no motivation. All my friends were, you were starting to get collecting money, having fun with their money. I still had fun. I drank a lot of alcohol. I think I started drinking heavily about 17, 16. And I would drink till I couldn't remember anything. I would wake up the next day. Often feeling fine, but after a while, started recollecting what had been happening the last night, and not always was good. I did some, both stupid and embarrassing things. There's always something to learn. So, of course, my mother nagged on me to get my shit together, get a job, start planning for something. Don't you want to have your driver's license? Don't you want to have your own place, have your own life? Be in control. I was, just very depressed. I didn't feel no connection with actually not that much of a connection with family, with society. I had my friends, of course. I have my family also. I don't put them in a talk bad about them. Mother and my father has always been there when I have expressed a need. But I think I was home about for 2 years, 2 years living at home, no income, no progression, I was frustrated. I read a lot on the internet. I have been reading on the internet for a long time. And I've been reading, we have a really big online forum in Sweden called The Flashback. And when I was young, 13, 14, this website was, some kind of underground website. Anonymously, you would discuss pretty much anything, because I think the goal of that website was to not be restricted by Swedish law. And since you could be anonymous, the discussion was meant to be free. The environment was for it to be free, with all what comes with that. So, yeah, I read a lot, and also, of course, read the news. The standard big news companies. They have the papers. They also have the online equivalent. The naive internet version, 90s, early 20s. But I didn't really feel connected with that as well. Of course, I was interested in TV and TV shows, but the news, the politicians, the subjects they were discussing, and the perspectives they held, a lot of things that was somewhat bothering me. And whenever I would be bored, I would go into this website, read the news just to amuse myself in some kind of way. Perhaps you find some link you can send to some person just for starting something. And something struck me. It was like, it's always the same kind of discussion about who is evil and who's not. What kind of reasoning to hold, what kind of arguments, or values. And this feeling that I got when I read these articles and all the discussion that followed, because I was well endeavored in the internet forums and stuff. I would follow it, and sometimes I would also add my opinion. And I realized that my opinion was not really. It was not the generally accepted one. So that made me a little bit scared in some way, because I felt I couldn't express myself as freely, perhaps. at some point I just realized that I will not watch TV. I will not read the news. You know, it gets to me in different channels. It gets to me anyway. Nowadays I update myself. So I've not owned my own TV. Let's see, where were I going? All right, yeah. So these years, well, at some point when I was looking online, you know, you meet all these kind of people, their personas, their creative personas, their careers, their motivations for doing what they're doing, different kind of videos, you know, funny stuff. And somehow I got the motivation to. I've always loved music, and I always listened to music since I was young. I made, you know, tapes, made CDs, watched MTV. I wrote my own song when I was about 11 in English. I made it in English because I figured that way I could have a bigger chance of, you know, realizing it, selling it to some kind of band or whatever. The band I had in mind was Backstreet Boys because it was kind of a love song. I don't think I talked to anyone about this as well. Yeah, about music also in the, you know, I think most of the, you know, civilized countries nowadays have these TV shows where contestants can try their luck and skill. And of course we have this as well. You have the grown-up edition where they actually sing and perform and get judged by telephone voters and jury. And you have this show where the kids imitated artists in their performance. So everyone was, you know, into music. Everyone wanted to perform in school in the hour that was assigned for the class to have some kind of fun time. There was often people performing, you know, imitating music, putting up like a setup to look like a band. So I got a guitar at 20 and I started weightlifting at 18. So music and weightlifting kept me above the surface, I guess, and the internet, of course, playing and reading. But, you know, 2 years at home is, you get desperate in this kind of mindset and situation. So I got my ass up and I actually applied for a job. It was a telecom marketing job, you know, call people in the middle of the day, try to get them to, I think it was donate money for some kind of charity. It was perhaps against drugs in schools and against smoking in schools. Long story short, I made one call in my assigned office. I got quite put down by my response from the receiver of that call. He had these calls before, and I was just wasting his time, you know. And I realized that also I had nothing good to say. So we hung up the phone. I looked out of the window and I looked around the office. You know, I was not prepared for, you know, the adult world. But I was very much sure that I did not want to spend my days in that kind of situation. Didn't feel honorable as well. You know, I had no understanding of what this money went to, or why I had to make these calls. I was just disconnected, you know. So I wished them good luck and just handed in my stuff 2 or 3 hours into the day. It was an educational day, but you know, they make you start making these calls early to get the people out of there. They don't want to do this. But after that, I actually got a job. So my mother helped me with this. She had actually spoken with some friends and had a contact at the local meat factory. It was producing meat products. It's famous in the area. So I got a job there. It was horrible the first days. They put me in the production line with some guy that was supposed to teach me. He wasn't really into teaching me. He, as I experienced it, or as I felt about it, he just took off as soon as he had a chance. But I stuck with it. What do you do? Adapt. Try to make something better out of it. This was at least much better than just sitting at home, because now I was at least making money during the days. I used to bicycle about, it's about 10 English miles per day, back and forth. And I've always been a night kind of person. I hated going up early for school. I slept in a lot of times, slept in all day. My mother had a really hard time getting me and my brother up of bed. So naturally, I started working on the nights, because this also made me free on a Friday. So I kind of enjoyed this for a bit at least. I was making pretty good money. The work was alright, but it was very non-stimulating. I was always bored. And the environment, there's big machines cranking, groaning, grinding, banging. It's not a good environment to speak to people and get to know people. And during the breaks, people like to have their activities to make the day go about. But I met some friends there, I had some fun. Overall, a good experience, and also it was good to have money. But the years in this factory, I realized that I did not want to do this all my life, because in these kind of places, people have been there in 40 years, 50 years maybe. No, not me. All of their work life. And then I was used to being on the internet, being in school with my friends, talking about anything, having fun. And these people were, to me, very far from that kind of mindset. And I still didn't feel like I fit in. The good thing about the job was that as it was loud, you couldn't speak to people during the days. You just did your chores, to say, or solve the problems that arise. So I could listen to podcasts, I could listen to music, 6 to 8 hours a day. I would practice singing, because no one would hear me with all the noises. I actually brought my guitar to the workplace, and I had a friend there. We played the guitar in the breaks. Doing whatever you could do to make the day interesting. So I listened to a lot of psychology, history, philosophy, some computational related as well, because I decided in this time that I've spent so much time with the computer, and I handle it all right. I understand it pretty good. I know what you can make of it. So I decided that career I would try to educate myself in computers. And yeah, I got fired from the factory. Well, they let me go every now and then. My contract was not, stable or secure. They could do a little bit as they wanted, considering the needs and such of the factory. Since I didn't have the allowance to higher education, I had to do it some way, and I choose to do it in a folkhögskola. It's there's, I think it's 2 or 3 ways to get this allowance into higher education, and folkhögskola is like it's a soft way. It's like the gymnasium again, but with older people and with different people. Maybe people that have problems with the language, problems with other aspects of their lives. Some people were there for like a new start. Some people were there for the activity of not just be home. And I was there just to get my allowance for the higher education, because the subjects I think I could already handle. Of course, I learned some new stuff and I put in work, but it was not an effort for me. I got my first girlfriend in this time. I've always had problems speaking with girls, and I thought a lot about this, and I think it's with my situation with my parents and everything. But I got my first girlfriend, I think it's 20 or 21, 20 perhaps. And she was in the same class as me, and there was some drama involved, of course. Lessons learned, experience had. After that year, I applied for 1 year at the Örebro University, and this is to study the higher math and higher physics and the kind of stuff you need for perhaps a computer program. Made a good friends there. I started practicing theater, and I think that's partly why I'm interested in doing this kind of videos as well. And the reason for starting, theater and this kind of drama or, storytelling courses and interest is because I've always had a hard time speaking in front of people. I've always had a hard time, reaching out to people in my younger years, and I knew that actors did not have this problem, and perhaps I could learn something from it. It's like, I figured at some point during these years, I figured that I've been taking like an easy way for the most part through my life, easy or the fun way, and I had problems with this, and I decided that I'm not just gonna go with the easy way. That's also why I started, weightlifting. Feeling more secure about yourself, knowing what your body can do, being in touch with it, with yourself. Turns out there's a lack of men in amateur theater, so I was brought into 2 plays. So we had, I think it's 8, 2 different plays, but 8 total shows. It's a special experience, acting with older people, younger people as well, of course. Hearing people in the audience cry, laugh. It's very engaging. Anyway, I passed this year, barely, but I passed. I still was not a good student. I put in the least amount of effort. And after that, I went to another town called Linköping for the computer science and engineering program of 5 years. It has a good reputation, and the school is the first that started the computer uh, science and engineering program, I think, in Sweden. Um, I had a lot of fun. It was a new start, a fresh start. I was on my, well, I had a friend from earlier in this town, but I was on my own. Apart from that, I studied. I get engaged in a lot of different activities. I arranged, parties. Um, I was helping with the receivement of new students. I took courses outside of the program. I danced 2 years in this theater show that's set up by university groups. It's called Spex in Swedish. It's a tradition. It's very funny and interactive kind of show. The audience can yell, actions for the actors to take. Perhaps do it in German. Perhaps do it as you're in love. Switch roles. I applied for acting as well, so I went to an audience and I sang. I also danced my own. I made a choreography, and I never done this before, but why not? I have done some dancing before. I tried ballet, and I also did some evening courses in traditional folk kind of dances. So I had some kind of experience, and also I had a lot of body experience from martial arts, and overall being a skater, running, climbing, weightlifting. So, the side activities of mine took more time than the studies. So I stopped studying after 2.5 years. And of course you need some money, and now you have a loan. At least I did. You don't have to take a loan, but you're allowed to take a loan to study here. I applied for an assistant job at a university, and I managed to get it. So I stayed there for 3 years, teaching programming. And I actually taught courses that I did not even take or finish myself. But so I would say at first I was studying university, but and the courses, the program. But after that, when I started working at the university, I was studying how the educational and university system worked. You see how it all goes together, and where it can be improved, and where it's really good. The team I was working was really good. It was really good people. The boss was good. We had fun. Didn't really feel like work. Of course, we have to put in work. It was hard teaching students. Standing in front of a class, explaining, correcting, examining, answering mails, trying to keep the line between private and work life. During this period, I also had I worked 1 year at the museum, and throughout the period, I also kept in touch with my old workplace. I've actually kept in touch. Well, now not for 2 years, but I've always worked there in the summer or when they have the need for weekend work. So at my best or my worst, I had 3 jobs. One at the museum. It's an air warfare museum. Worked in university, and on the weekends I went to my hometown for the meat factory. It was really hard on my body and on my mind, but I saw it as I needed to do it because I had been, taking it easy and relaxing for too long. I know people go through a lot of tough stuff. They go through war, they go through sickness, death, and still make it. And I had been living, comfortable life. I also have to put in work. So this is actually where my career started taking form. And after these 3 years, I had a lot of fun in these 3 years. I made a lot of good friends, good or interesting realizations. And we're starting to get close to my conclusion at the end of this video, since we're starting to reach the now and the time aspect. So I will just conclude this video and end with a small explanation of why, or an extension of the explanation of why. A lot of countries, people have been, all the world have been experiencing a lot of change at fast pace these recent years. And I just want to say, as a citizen, and as a taxpayer, and as a product of the system, or how to phrase it, I'm not really satisfied or happy with the kind of framework that I'm or have been brought up in. And I think in some way I represent some kind of alternative, or I'm a difference to the norm, because I don't have feelings invested in the state I'm living in. I put in time for the state, and mainly for myself, of course, but not much of my day is used to think about what our politicians say, or what they do, what the news write. What's the narrative? It's always a narrative. And this narrative, I'm not in it. And I think there's a lot of people, or a lot of people always have felt like this. And I want to put my money where my mouth is. So if I don't like what I'm seeing, or what I can grab from my surroundings, perhaps I should produce something myself. So for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been at least practicing my guitar and singing. I've been making some videos, and I've been engaging in activities, just trying to be something new, something that's not motivated, inspired, or funded by government, by anything from or of the political system, the economical system. I just want something new and fresh. And I think my struggle has been to endure the environment and the experience overall of growing up in this period, in this place. And the feeling is still with me, this. I feel like I fit in. I have my place now. I know what to do from here. But it's taken a long time, And I don't think I'm the only person in Sweden with these kind of thoughts. The political people here in charge, they don't represent me or my reasoning or my values or my history, it seems. In my last words, I just want to say, with the technology and the opportunities we have right now, I think it's just weird and strange to rely on perhaps government or big companies and their activities to engage in discussion, to understand the world, to understand all the people and all their beliefs and their ideals. So this is not my first, but this is an attempt to create something to think about, perhaps talk to me about, ask me a question, write me something, make your own video, I don't know. Maybe you're interested in some technical part of this country is working. It's a lot of different ways around the world with how handling money. Sweden I think we are, top 5, top 3 in being a cashless society. I think we have one of the best systems for monitoring the citizens. We have good, very high technology for economical transactions. We have very much debt around here. Most people take a loan for, most part of their lives just to have a place to live. And some even do it for a car. And I don't know, keep making the future. Keep the expectations real. I usually say, this game the kids play. I think all kids around the world must play this. They ask their parents why. The parent may say, you may have to go to bed now. Why? So you're tired, you have to sleep, and your body has to grow and process and everything. But why? And you can always ask this question over and over and over and over again. And this is the way that children, outsmart their parents, because sooner or later the person giving the orders, or they will tie a knot on their reasoning. Stay humble, be true to yourself, and I think that's the hardest and the most important. If you're not true to yourself, you always have this doubt of what you're doing. And if you're in doubt, just take a risk. It doesn't have to be a big risk. Just take a risk and handle the consequences.